Mr. Purdon, Mr. Gary, are we ready to meeting?
Believe so.
Okay. The first thing on our agenda is a public hearing. This public hearing held by the local Metro Area Pollution Control Board is called to order and has been held pursuant to KRS Chapter 7 and district regulations. Notice of this hearing has been published pursuant to the state law. This public hearing is being held by video teleconference due to the COVID-19 outbreak. Instructions on making written and oral statements by video teleconference have been distributed. All statements must be presented today. All statements should be concise. All statements will become a part of the hearing record. There is a regulation package to be reviewed today. Would the staff please present the regulation package? Mr. Gary.
Thank you, Chairman Helton. Share some slides to go over the regulation package this morning. This morning, we have for consideration of the board four regulations: Regulation 1.02 definitions, Regulation 1.11 control of open burning, Regulation 1.13 control of objectionable odors in the ambient air, Regulation 1.15 version of federal regulations incorporated by reference. I'll go over each in turn, but first I wanted to go through some preliminary matters. Just a little overview of our regulatory process. There are a number of steps and opportunities for public participation, this being the final one before the board's consideration of the regulation package. This is an overview of our normal regulatory process, and this has some overview of the dates that have already passed in this regulation package's public participation process. This was first considered by the policy committee of the board on November 11th of last year. The public comment period opened on November 16th and remained open until February the 16th. That was for written comments. We had a public meeting during that period on January 19th with an opportunity for questions and answers with the public. And we had the first portion of this public hearing on February the 9th, 2023. That was an evening meeting with an opportunity from 6 to 7:30 for the public to come and comment. The continued portion being this morning at 10 a.m. Finally, after the hearing, there will be opportunity for the board to take action on this during the regular meeting. A little bit of a difference between public hearing and a public meeting, since I've mentioned both. Public meeting is an opportunity for the public to come and ask questions about the regulation package or the action under consideration. It doesn't include an opportunity to make formal comments on the package. It's more of an informal opportunity for a discussion with the district. Whereas a public hearing, such as this morning, there is no opportunity for question and answers anymore. This is an opportunity for the public to come and make its comments to the board at the district for consideration. The district accepts these public comments and will formally respond to any comments today in a formal response comment document later. There was a preliminary response comment document that covered all written comments during that written comment period. That was distributed and posted publicly prior to this meeting. In addition, you can see a number of other regulatory materials were posted on the website, distributed to the board prior to this meeting, including copies of the draft regulations, RLSO, which stands for Red Line Strikeout, highlight where those changes were made, preliminary regulatory impact assessments, a frequently asked question sheet, as well as that preliminary response to comment documents and a number of copies of notices that were sent out to the public and the board. Finally, before going into the regulation package itself, it's important to highlight the distribution of APCD facilities within our community. Due to historical patterns of racism and redlining, you can see the distribution of APCD facilities and industrial facilities in general throughout our community tends to be clustered around persons of color and lower median income neighborhoods. First regulation is Regulation 1.02. This proposal would update Regulation 1.02 to incorporate a list of trivial activities and update the definition of volatile organic compounds. The list of volatile organic compounds would add HFO 1336 MZZZ, as it has been found to be minimally reactive in the air and doesn't lead to the formation of ground level ozone. This would not impact its listing as a hazardous air pollutant. That is separate from its definition as a VOC. However, it is not listed as a HAP anyway. List of trivial activities being incorporated. It's already used by the districts. List of activities that don't have to be included in permit applications are not permitted by the districts. Things like mopping your floor, that sort of matter. This proposal would incorporate the list into the rule itself rather than just being posted on the website. This adds a level of formality that EPA has requested of us for incorporation into our state implementation plan, which is our formal document showing how we comply with the Clean Air Act. One note on Regulation 1.02, during the comment period, it was pointed out informally that the districts left out a space between the words district and regulations in the first paragraph. In our recommendation, we will recommend that the regulation is adopted as proposed with that one minor amendment, adding that space back in. Regulation 1.111, control of open burning, the amendments would allow the use of certain accelerants, petroleum products such as gasoline, diesel, or kerosene to start fires in certain circumstances. These circumstances are still permitted. These are generally agricultural and other controlled burns that meet the requirements of the rule and are already allowed. This is just to get the fire going. It is the common practice of that practice to use accelerants in starting those fires. Similar to 1.02, a couple of minor changes in our recommendation to the board. First, the district proposes changing the phrase fire for general agricultural production or controlled burn for weed abatement to state fire for general agricultural production, i.e. a controlled burn for weed abatements. This is in response to one of the comments that was addressed in the preliminary response to comment document, just clarifying that a controlled burn is not a separate circumstance, but a clarification of what a general agricultural production fire is. In addition, there is a accidental misnumbered section 2.1.10. That should all be part of 2.1.9. The district will recommend in its recommendation to the board that regulation 1.111 be adopted with these two minor changes, addressing that misnumbered section and adding i.e. for weed abatement. I'll come back to regulation 1.13 in just a moment. Addressing regulation 1.15 first. This amendment is being proposed to incorporate the most recent version of federal regulations incorporated by reference elsewhere in the district regulations. There are a number of places where we enforce federal regulations ourselves. We have to periodically update what version of those federal regulations it is that we use. Finally, looking at regulation 1.13. These amendments are being proposed to align the language of regulation 1.13 with a prohibition in the district's enabling statutes and to provide additional notice regarding the district's current enforcement practices. As you can see on the right, this addresses odor complaints. Odor complaints tend to be clustered around those same neighborhoods that I showed in the earlier maps in central Louisville and west Louisville, around those same neighborhoods where persons of color and lower median income neighborhoods tend to be. That's why this has garnered some interest and is particularly important today. Regulation 1.13 is on the right with the highlighted changes. We are proposing changing the phrase any substance to such quantities of air contaminants or other material and adding the phrase substantial detriment, nuisance, or annoyance to any considerable number of persons. You can see on the left, this matches the enabling statute to add such quantities of air contaminants or other material and any considerable number of persons to our regulation so that it more closely matches. In addition, the phrase substantial injury, detriment, nuisance, or annoyance comes from Kentucky common law, court decisions defining what public nuisance is. Addressing briefly how this relates to ongoing district enforcement actions, this would not apply to any violations occurring before the amendment of the regulation if it is adopted by the board. The proposal aligns with current law and the district's current enforcement practice and policy and will not affect how the district enforces the rule in the future. In addition, this was a recommendation from the county attorney's office. And as part of a mediation agreement with Swift Port Company regarding alleged violations of this regulation, the district stated its intent to propose these provisions. And Swift, who had no part in drafting the proposed revisions, supported the district's proposed revisions for the board's consideration. However, the board is not bound in any way by the agreement reached during that mediation and may decline to adopt the proposed regulation revisions. Finally, you can subscribe to follow the regulation development process. You can subscribe to our APCD email list. In addition, once a decision is reached either way by the board on this regulation package, it will be posted on the district's recent actions page. So all these materials will continue to be available for at least a month afterwards for the public's notice. And you can also follow us on social media. Finally, I believe Ms. Hamilton has a brief statement.
I do. Good morning, everyone. We'd like to let the board know that we've seen similar concerns raised about the stringency of our regulation based on change to by adding substantial. The district wanted to be sure that the board understood we saw these concerns in social media, which is not yet a place where the district can take comments. Thought it was important to share that that conversation had been. With respect to that, we believe those comments have been addressed in the response to comment. It's been provided.
So they're addressed, general, not specific to social comment.
Similar comments were addressed already in writing. Finally, the district does recommend the regulation package as proposed with the 3 minor amendments. The one change to regulation 1.02, adding the space back in, the 2 changes to 1.111, addressing the misnumbered section, as well as changing the phrase from or controlled burn to IE controlled burn. With those changes, the district recommends the board does adopt the regulation package.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. Has any member of the public registered to make a oral statement this morning regarding these regulations?
We don't have any registered comments at this time.
Has any member of the public submitted a written statement regarding these regulations?
Yes, a number of written comments were received. Those are addressed in the preliminary response to comment document distributed to the board, made available to the public prior to this meeting.
Okay. Are there any, excuse me, any members of the public in the Edison room that wish to make a statement? If so, please approach the podium and state your name. Anybody in the room want to make a statement? Are there any members of the public that wish to make a brief comment on the teleconference? Please raise your hand by teleconference and you will be called on. This is a feature you can find on the participant list by pressing *3 if joining by phone, and you will be called on. We have anybody on the teleconference that wish to make a statement?
I see no raised hands.
Okay. Are there any questions by board members regarding these 4 regulations?
Not from me.
Question. 1.13. In addition to that word substantial, there is in the original document phrase persons or the public that is injury or annoyance to persons or the public, and now it's to a considerable number. And that differs from the enabling statute. Well, one question I have is it necessary in legal terms to have the exact wording there? Statute.
The recommendation was made by the county attorney's office, we believe, to make the regulation more enforceable. The closer it matches the enabling regulation, or the enabling statute rather, the more enforceable we believe it is. If the regulation were to be challenged by somebody during an enforcement action, we believe this makes it more enforceable by not being challengeable because it matches the enabling statute closely. I don't know if Ms. Hamilton has anything more to say about the word substantial. I know it was addressed in the comments in the chat here that some of what she had to say was inaudible.
I apologize for that. Word substantial was added to recognize the contribution of Kentucky common law regarding nuisances. The case law helps us understand what a court may be looking for enforcement of that particular vision. Attorney, additional to add.
No, I just want to reiterate what Mr. Gary and Ms. Hamilton said was to closely match as possible the enabling statute, which all of the authority flows to the district from those statutes. So in order to match the language of the enabling statute is allows for more of an authority. In terms of the substantial amendment, that is a result from the Florida case laws on what Kentucky considers to be a public nuisance. And that closely aligns with
What about the phrase considerable number of persons? That seems a little imprecise as to the threshold for the regulation. Because persons, very precise, it would mean two of them, or a considerable number. I guess means a large number.
It also indicates there, it's not exclusive, that it's a considerable number of persons, which does, to us, mean more than one. With respect to that whole phrase, it's for the public. So that has a more expansive to it. So it's not a numbers game, although I will certainly say that what we see with respect to our odor complaints is that we've seen in the past who may be irritated by a source of odors nearby. Sometimes we get a lot of burger complaints from people who just have it at their burger joint. This really isn't intended to address that situation where a neighbor may be annoyed with another neighbor. It's intended to be a public nuisance standard. So any considerable number of persons for the public is the mark that we're looking at.
Other question? I just have one question on regulations 111, control of open burning. I didn't realize that you can get a special permit to burn in Jefferson County.
You can. There are a few different types of burn permits that you can receive in Jefferson County. The one being addressed here is an agricultural burn, which requires a permit. This allows for clearing the fields for recognized great reasons. You can also receive a permit for bonfires in certain circumstances or recreational fires, as well as for fire training, fire safety training.
Yeah. So do we get a lot of permits for open burning? I mean, we always see it on our list for complaint summary, people burning leaves and.
That would not be permitted in
That's
any,
not permitted.
well, other than an agricultural burn, I suppose, would have in certain circumstances, but a recreational fire is never allowed to contain yard waste, leaves, trash, things of that nature.
We do have kind of a seasonal, and Mr. Gribet may be able to add in here, but we do see a seasonal uptick with those burns related to bonfires in the fall.
Okay.
So that would probably be the largest group of permitted fires that we
Okay.
see. We do have representatives from the agricultural burn sector with us this morning. These gentlemen here are here
Okay.
with respect to the proposed amendments.
Okay.
Is the definition of agricultural burn driven by zoning of agricultural properties? I mean, you say,
We do review those, and they do have to be for a recognized, I can pull up the full
Regulation.
phrasing.
Defines what that would be.
It doesn't deal with zoning, but it's for recognized purposes.
Any other questions? No. Thank you, Mr. Gary,
Thank you.
for your detailed explanation of the regulations. Now I will make a roll call for the regular meeting of the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control Board to order. Due to the COVID-19 outbreak, we are conducting the monthly board meeting today by video teleconference. And the first thing I'd like to see, we have a quorum for the board members. I will conduct a roll call of board members that are present on this teleconference. When I say, please say yes. Dr. Cole,
Yes.
Dr. May, Candace White,
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. May's here.
Candace White.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Marissa Neal,
I'm here.
okay, and Dr. Gorsh. He's here, thank you.
I'm here too.
And I apologize. Dr. May's here. I just couldn't hear very well.
I'm sorry, yeah, and Steve Sullivan's here also, so thank you very much. Ms. Hampton, do we have any introductions this morning?
Yes, sir, we do. I would like to introduce everyone to Deputy Mayor Nicole George, who is with us this morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
I'd also like to introduce the district's new attorney, parliamentarian. Juan has joined the Jefferson County Attorney's Office in 2021 to represent the district after 14 years with the Kentucky Public Service Commission. And I'll follow that with public recognitions. The district is both saddened and happy to recognize Stacy Dott, who retired following 23 years of service to Louisville Metro. 22 years of that service were spent in the Jefferson County Attorney's Office in service to the district. And the district will miss her expertise in the Clean Air Act and the district's regulations. And we deeply appreciate her contribution to the district's clean air mission. In fact, the board and the district have put together a proclamation, which we will share with Stacy, to recognize her for her help in improving the air that everyone breathes and assisting the community in meeting air pollution standards, and for being part of our vital work. We wish her clear skies and much happiness. Board would like to say anything for Stacy. I hope that perhaps she's joined us virtually.
Well, on behalf of the board chairman, I'd like to wish Stacy a happy retirement. We will miss her. Hopefully, she will drop by and see us sometimes.
We hope so too.
Thank you for her guidance.
Yeah, thank her. Yeah.
We will pass that along. I'm also deeply sad this morning to let everyone know that Mike Devonshire, who many may remember from these meetings as that tall, distinguished, white-haired gentleman, lost his battle with prostate cancer earlier in February. For over 50 years, Mr. Devonshire contributed to the environmental profession. Most notably for the district, this included 9 years of service as the district's air pollution control officer in the 1980s, during which time the district developed the first emissions trading program in North America. Our work today rests on the foundation that our predecessors set. Contribution in Mr. Devonshire's memory will be made to the Air Quality Trust Fund to recognize his work improving Louisville's air quality.
Well, thank you very much. And he was a regular participant at our board meeting. I think I saw him at our last February meeting. I think he was.
I think he did try to attend many, and I will say on behalf of the district's current air pollution control officers, Matt King and Steve Gravett, it's a tremendous responsibility. And that he continued to be interested in our work after he retired is a compliment to the work of his fellow air pollution professionals.
Or any other public recognitions?
Not today.
Thank you very much. Next thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes. We have the public hearing. Any questions or upgrades to the meeting minutes of the public hearing? Hearing none. Minutes stand approved. Also, you received the meeting minutes of the regular board meeting. Are there any upgrades, corrections to the regular board meeting minutes? Hearing none, minutes stand approved. Thank you very much. Mr. Gary, has anyone registered to make a comment this morning?
No, Chairman Hilton.
Has anyone provided written comments this morning?
No, Chairman Hilton.
Okay. Are there any members of the public in the Edison room that wish to make a comment? If so, please approach the podium and state your name. Are there any other members of the public that wish to make a brief comment on this teleconference?
I see no raised hands, Chairman Hilton.
Does anyone wish to speak? think I mentioned that earlier in the run, I guess not. This completes the public portion of the meeting. Now we're down to unfinished business. There is no unfinished business for today. New business, we will take up the regulation package. The district has recommended that the board adopt the regulation package, which includes the amendments to district regulations, 1.02 definitions, 1.1 control of open burning, 1.13 control of Jefferson orders, and also 1.15 version of the federal regulations adopted, incorporated by reference. Now, what I like to do, I like to take each one of these regulations one by one. That's okay with the board. First, are there any questions around regulation 1.02? Motion.
So,
Okay, and it's second and approved. Now we will make a roll call, or should we just, we'll do a roll call on each one of these regulations. And Steve Sullivan,
yes.
Dr. Colbert,
Yes.
Dr. May,
Yes.
thank you. Candace White,
Yes.
thank you. Marissa Neal, Dr. Garsh,
Yes.
thank you. So regulation 1.02 has been approved. Now let's go to regulation 1.1. Can I get a motion to adopt that? Second? Sullivan? Any questions regarding that? If not, let's vote. Steve Sullivan?
Yes.
Dr. Colbert?
Yes.
Dr. May?
Yes.
Thank you. Candace White?
Yes.
Marissa Neal and.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you. So that regulations 1.1 has been approved by the board. Let's go on to regulation 1.13. Can we get a motion to adopt that regulations?
So moved.
Second, thank you. Now we will vote to adopt that. Steve Sullivan,
Yes.
Dr. Colbert,
Yes.
Dr. May,
Yes.
Candace White,
Yes.
Marissa Neal,
Yes.
Dr. Daniel. Yes. Thank you very much. We have one more, 1.15. Version of federal regulations adopted and incorporated by reference. Can I get a motion to accept that?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Now we will vote. Steve Sullivan,
Yes.
thank you. Dr. Colbert,
Yes.
Dr. May,
Yes.
Candace White,
Yes.
you, Marissa O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Garsh.
Yes.
Well, thank the board members. So all four regulations have been adopted and approved by the board. Thank you very much. I know it takes a little time, but we want to do this the right way. So make sure that all the four regulations have been approved and adopted by the board. Thank you very much. Committee reports. I don't think any committees met in the last month. Now we got the director's report. Mrs. Hamilton.
Thank you, Chairman Hilton. Well, good morning, everyone. First off, if you haven't noticed, we do have new technology today. I have moved down here because we're trying to streamline our ability to hold these meetings. And with our new technology, I understand that it may be difficult to hear me from back in the corner. Can everyone hear me well on the meeting now? Dr. May, can you let me know you're hearing me well?
It is good, but not great. So, but a lot better than before.
Well,
That's
let's
better.
try this.
That's
All
better.
right, very good. So I'd like to thank Andy Purdon for his continued work in helping the district upgrade its ability to hold these meetings both in person and virtually. There may be some additional technology we try out in the near future, but I can tell you the view from here is clear. And I look forward to presentations of our data where you can actually see it on this screen clearly as opposed to our prior setup with a loud projector here and a fuzzy screen. So again, Andy, thank you so much. So as many are aware, there was a train carrying hazardous materials, including vinyl chloride, that derailed in New Palestine, Ohio last month. And as you may have seen, concerns about the impacts to drinking water supplies were widespread throughout the Ohio River Basin. The district received a number of calls from elected officials and interested community members about whether or not we would see air quality impacts from that derailment. In response, the district issued a statement on social media that based on the distance between our area and the predominant wind directions in the past week, there are no air quality impacts expected in the Louisville area. And vinyl chloride, the primary pollutant of concern, is monitored for at 2 sites in Louisville, and a preliminary review of the raw data shows no vinyl chloride was detected at either site. And out of an abundance of caution, we'll continue to review that data to see if we see that impact. As a follow-up, we've continued that monitoring, and to date, we've not detected any vinyl chloride in the weeks following this event. I'd like to thank Matt Mudd, the district's communications specialist, for sharing this information via social media and for preparing a new report, which we'll be publishing later this week, that covers the district's monitoring of select air toxics utilizing an automated gas chromatograph. This is new technology, and the district is among the first nationwide to use it for air toxics monitoring. The data shared in the report is a first full year of quality assured data from the Auto GC at the Algonquin Parkway Air Monitoring Site. That covers July 2020 to June 2021. And the report also lays out the process for collecting and verifying the data and how we review that data internally. As for that data, we've provided this information to the board in our regular air toxics reports. To provide some context, we've also included references to the West Louisville Air Toxics Study. And we also provided some comparisons to other air monitoring sites throughout the country in various settings to give some comparison to the amount that we've monitored here. A deeper look into this report and its data is planned for next month's meeting so that everyone has a chance to review the report before it's discussed. So look for this to come out shortly. That is a new part of the district's air monitoring process. But in our day-to-day monitoring, we're also asked, including this morning, to look at other events. And yesterday there was a release of nitrogen dioxide, or NOx, from a source in New Albany, Indiana. You may have seen that on the news. And as a follow-up, people wanted to know whether there was an impact here in Louisville. Received that email after I had received an analysis from our air monitoring staff that even though the wind was predominantly moving towards Louisville yesterday, that this release would have been dispersed before it would have impacted our area. And they confirmed that by looking at our monitors at Cannons Lane and Durrett Lane. And nitrogen dioxide, of course, we talk about it a lot as a precursor of ozone, but on its own, in high concentrations, it can lead to irritation of mucosal membrane, the eyes, the lungs, nose, linings. It can also, say from a house fire, cause significant impact when you're in an enclosed area at high concentrations. So I'd like to thank our air monitoring staff for their work in following that release across the river. And for their analysis of our own monitoring data as well as that of IDEM in Floyd County. Are there any questions about either of those events?
I have one question. When does the ozone season start?
It began March 1st.
Oh, it's already beginning now?
We're already in it. It will end October 30th.
So have we, probably too early to see if we have any ozone that particular day or not?
So ozone is formed when you have those two precursors, NOx and volatile organic compounds, in the
Right.
presence of sunlight. We're still in that part, and Billy, feel free to jump in here. The angle of the sun is still relatively low compared to our summertime difference, and the temperatures were very low. So
It was cold yesterday.
it was cold yesterday, and we'll hope for a nice, cool,
Okay.
spring as we move forward. Just an FYI, we have seen ozone development in April before, a couple years, I think 2018 2018, 2019. Okay, that is unusual for us.
And we have, excuse me, we have seen a bit of ozone, not close to the standard, but it has been elevated since we began monitoring first, but we'll provide that.
Is that directly related to the heat? Because 2 weeks ago it was 80 degrees.
Yes, that's the direct side.
Thank you.
So air monitoring in places like New Albany, they have much of a network for air monitoring in southern Indiana.
Yes, they do. They have 3 sites. They've been reorganizing those sites a little bit, moving those around, but they predominantly monitor for ozone and particulate matter. They do have some toxics monitoring.
And we work with our colleagues at the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. Billy's group in particular consults with their group when we really hit the crunch zone of summertime weather to look at both sides of the river and the potential for needing to issue an air quality alert with respect to high ozone or particulate matter.
And IDEM handles all that in southern Indiana.
They do. And interestingly, they are handled by US EPA Region 5, while we are US EPA Region 4. And based on our combined work, not just with air monitoring, but also on our state implementation plans, because we're all part of the same metropolitan statistical area, we often see vast differences in how the US EPA regions will address an issue. So, lots of cats to herd. So this evening, several of us will be participating with Mayor Greenberg, the deputy mayors, including Deputy Mayor George, and a host of Metro agency for the mayor's first night out. That'll be held at the Northeast YMCA tonight from 5:30 to 7:30. And these meetings are an opportunity for the public to engage with Metro leadership, to ask questions, voice concerns, or otherwise discuss issues important to them in a series of town hall gatherings out of the community. We really look forward to this tonight. It's always exciting to hear thoughts about our work and also to understand people's concerns. I wish I had more information to share on this one. In the last month, it seems like Michelle King and I have done nothing but attend US EPA webinars on a flurry of funding opportunities that they have announced. This is for communities, stakeholders, and agencies. It's intended to reduce pollution, address climate change, and restore environmental justice. Some of these grants include the Environmental Justice Government to Government Program, which provides funding at the state, local, territorial, and tribal levels to support government activities that lead to measurable environmental or public health impacts in communities disproportionately burdened by environmental harms. We're actively working on a grant application to submit for our community partners who may be looking at this grant as well. The deadline for submitting that grant has been extended, so I encourage you to go to EPA's website to check up on that. It also includes the Climate Pollution Reduction Grants Program. This is intended to develop for states and local governments, tribes and territories to develop and implement plans for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and other types of air pollution. The funding provides an investment of $5 billion to support these efforts. That's a lot of money, and it's intended to help develop strong local greenhouse gas and pollution reduction strategies. It will be done in 2 phases. The first of that phase is a is $250 million for non-competitive planning grants and $4.6 billion for competitive implementation grants. From an air pollution control agency perspective, the amount of money is overwhelming. It's unprecedented. It's also very challenging for us because we're seeing all these opportunities come out all at once. So we are working with our partners both at the state and also here locally to leverage as much of this money as we can to improve Louisville's air quality and achieve the goals set by the funder.
Who can submit a grant application?
It varies by the grant. For the climate pollution reduction grants, those are broadly speaking, states, local communities, municipalities, air pollution control agencies. When it gets down to the implementation phase, there's a broader group of people who may be able to compete for that money. The government to government program, it requires government applicants to have a community partner. Michelle, is there anything more you'd like to add on that?
Just that we've been working with a couple different community-based organizations and are still reaching out to partners on that. It's going to be quite a large, complex project as the grant program calls for. So if there are other community organizations listening in, feel free to reach out to us and we'll see how we might integrate that additional interest into the project as well.
Includes groups that actually implement climate control activities.
So for the climate implementation, I'm sorry, the climate pollution reduction rate, yes. When we get to that phase, they'll be looking for projects that will actually implement and reduce. This first phase that we're looking at now, and it's being done in two steps. One is for states. The second is for local governments and air pollution control agencies like ours. We have an extra month to make our application compared to our state programs. That first phase is really intended to develop that comprehensive plan. Louisville's far ahead of many of its peer cities in that we have a climate adaptation plan developed, we have a climate resilience plan in place, and we have a very comprehensive greenhouse gas inventory. This money will allow us to do a number of things that may include updating any or all of that work, whereas many of our other communities will be starting that work, and also looking for pilot projects in places where we can really tap into using these funds to reduce climate pollution. And typically when we do that, we're talking about different ways of generating energy that don't include combusting fuel. And whether that's cars or other sorts of electrical production, LG&E or independent companies, typically when we reduce our combustion, we reduce the precursors and those criteria pollutants that we look at. This is really great work. It's really great timing. And we're very interested in learning more about these grants and how work that we've undertaken over the past couple of years on a real kind of at a nascent step to look at our work, not just with the criteria pollutants. And typically we look at SO2 and then we move on to look at PM like we're doing now with this new proposed standard. And then we look at ozone, but really to pull everything together comprehensively from a multi-pollutant standpoint, not only to look where we can get additional reductions, bang for the buck when we control one pollution by controlling another, but also here locally where we can pull together those air toxics, which our STAR program addresses, and also our photochemically reactive volatile organic compounds, many of which are also air toxics that give rise to ozone. So again, this is a really big investment by the federal government, and we hope to be able to put our work to good use in acquiring some of this funding and also supporting other global metro partners in their own work to reduce climate. With that, we're joined this morning by MSD. Tony Parrott and his team are here this morning to report on MSD's findings and technical memoranda, the ongoing catch basin repair process, and their next steps in implementing the first phase of the Morris-Forman Water Quality Treatment Plant Odor Control Master Plan to address odors from Morris-Forman and the collection system. I'm interested in particular in how odors will be managed next summer on a short-term basis and how projects identified in the Phase 1 Odor Control Master Plan will be implemented. This ties into our earlier conversation about grants. The district recognizes that funding will be needed to implement the necessary infrastructure improvements identified in the master plan. And so we want to be sure that MSD understands that the district will support their efforts with our complaint data and our air pollution expertise to assist them with their funding to mitigate and reduce sewer-related odors, particularly those west of 9th Street. I'd like to recognize the district's compliance officers, Tina Oakes, Mario Beeler, Steve Oswald, and Patrick DeGangi, who respond, among other things, to odor complaints. Over the past several years, the bulk of their work for several months in the summer has been responding to complaints about odors from MSD's operations. I'd also like to recognize Byron Barber and Matt Dwyer, staff from the district's enforcement program, who've also spent a significant amount of their time developing notices of violation and corrective actions to address these odors. Finally, I'd like to thank the Air Pollution Control Board for your leadership, for approving the agreed board order requiring MSD to develop and implement a countywide odor control master plan with priority and focus in phase 1 on the Morris Foreman service area and the collection system between 9th Street and the Ohio River, where the majority of odor complaints have been received by the district. They were also required to create an odor event outreach communication plan, a collection system maintenance service schedule, and a publicly available complaint and response log for all complaints. Again, thank you all for your help in helping the district address these complaints. I know that you've heard from our community on many occasions about the impact these odors have on their quality of life. With that, if there are no further questions, I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Parrott for his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Hampton. Looking forward to hearing from Mr. Parrott.
Good morning.
Morning.
As Rachel said, I'm Tony Parrott. I'm the Executive Director at the Metropolitan School District. Very happy to be here today to address and update you on a lot of work that me and my team have done in response to the amended agreed order for APCD. As Rachel mentioned, there's been a lot of work that we have done since the amended order was in effect. One of the things that we want to talk about today is to really just give you just a little bit of update on the MSD Clarity Program, which was our public outreach program that we have been utilizing over the last 18 months. An update on the Morris Foreman Odor Control Master Plan, including the sewer collection system that drains towards Morris Foreman, and update on some of the catch basin rehab repair work that we've done in certain neighborhoods, particularly in West Louisville, and a little bit about phase 2 of our odor control master plan. First, with Clarity, the name of the program is says it right there, with the air being the main focus on how we can look at taking a comprehensive and responsive approach to address complaints and issues, but also proactively address odor mitigation. We have been working with our team to really have a far-reaching approach to really look at all of our assets and what type of odors are emanating from those assets, and making sure that we want to be a good neighbor, regardless of what neighborhood we're in. And we're in every part of Jefferson County in terms of our service area. And we want to be a customer-focused entity in every part of Jefferson County. One thing that we did with our Clarity program, and because of COVID, we didn't want to, we wanted to have meetings, but we also wanted to make sure that we could make them virtual as well and live stream those meetings out. So we've been kind of moving around the different watersheds that we operate our treatment facilities in to make sure that folks had an opportunity to view the meetings, to get an update from our team. Mr. Damon Talley, who is the director of our Water Quality Treatment Center, and Robin Birch, who's also here with us as well, were the primary folks that have been involved in those initial meetings. We plan on continuing those meetings going forward on a hybrid and also in an in-person approach. We think it's very important that we continue communication, but it's also important that we tell them more about what we're doing. We have had a lot of conversations with Mayor Greenberg and also with Nicole George to figure out how we can work collaboratively with other metro agencies, including APCD, to make sure the information that we have is getting out to the public so folks really understand what we're doing and how it's impacting the things that we're doing, how it's reducing or mitigating odors in their community. As I mentioned, we have facilities in every part of Jefferson County. These are just the 5 major watersheds where we have 5 regional water quality treatment centers. And you see the Morris Foreman plant that is focused there. The red dot doesn't show up on the screen, but the Morris Foreman is our largest watershed. It is the largest treatment facility in the state of Kentucky. And it has a lot of, it serves a large area inside I-6, 264. And that is mostly what we call our combined sewer service area, meaning it takes on both sanitary waste from homes and residents, businesses, and also stormwater within the collection system as well. It's a combined sewer system. So most of the focus that we have been doing is really to figure out how we can address issues relative to Morris Foreman, but we also monitor every facility across Jefferson County and how the odors are impacting the community. As far as Morris Foreman, we have put together the odor control master plan, which we completed in 2022. And the focus there is on the plant itself, the collection system that drains to the plant. And I think there's approximately 5 or so pump stations that drain to the facility as well. We've had the ability to evaluate and look at what type of improvements we need to make to address odor. And there's going to be a phased implementation of those recommendations. Some of those recommendations are going to be in concert with construction work that we are either in design or already doing at our Morris Foreman treatment facility. And we'll talk about that. We did complete 9 technical memorandums, and those memorandums have been submitted to APCD. As part of the process, those memorandums really made up or provided the basis for the odor control master plan report, which we also submitted in December 22. And this kind of shows you the name or the title of the 9 technical memorandums that were part of that report. One thing that you'll see there, Morris Foreman Water Quality Treatment Center background document review, collection system review, pump station review, plan process, current system odor impact, sampling program, current odor technologies, and new odor control technology recommendations, and odor control conceptual design. Under the odor control master plan, there were 4 recommendations given for Morris Foreman, 2 recommendations for the collection system that drains to Morris Foreman, and recommendations for 5 pump stations, as I mentioned earlier. For Morris Foreman specifically, recommendations for a solids handling odor control system, biological odor control system, and dissolved air flotation, main equipment building exhaust, and work at our east and west headworks of our facility. Under solids handling, the recommendation was that we would have a multimedia carbon unit to be added to reduce odor emissions. And that carbon unit is being added to the handling odor control for the upcoming biosolids processing solutions, which is already under design at Morris Foreman. And that capital is going to be stretching out over the next couple of years. But I think we are including the carbon unit as a part of the design of the facility going forward. Secondly, the biological odor control, the recommendation was, in addition to the upgrades already under construction, we would consider a multimedia carbon unit to be installed to reduce odor emissions concentration. We will be evaluating that particular recommendation once the upgrades during the current construction are completed, and we'll be doing performance testing as well as a part of that. And so we'll be able to make a determination after that capital project and performance testing whether the biological odor control media is necessary. As far as the dissolved air flotation for main equipment building exhaust, the recommendation was a bio trickling filter recommended to capture air exhausted from the DAFT area and the main equipment building. Again, we will be evaluating that after the current construction projects are completed to see if that needs to be an element or a trickling filter that we need to add on as a layer. As far as the headworks, the recommendation was to have a bio-trickling filter that covers the open channels in the east and west headworks to reduce odors. And so we have been looking at how we can reduce some odors from the east and west headworks. And we are also making sure that we are capturing some remedies within the current construction projects to see how we can take advantage of our existing odor device and mitigate the odors from the east and west headworks. And then again, we'll be able to do further evaluation once the current construction and the performance testing is done to address odors from additional improvements that may be necessary at the east and west headworks. In the collection system, this has been a really expansive look at the size of our collection system. We have over 24,000 catch basins in the combined sewer system. And essentially, a catch basin is something that is sort of an inlet that is in the street and collects the runoff or the stormwater that gets into the combined sewer system. And some of these catch basins, the way they were built back in the 1950s or even older than that, some of them were not built with traps to where odors can release from that system. And it's also exacerbated when mostly the summer and the fall when we have a very dry period. If you recall last year, between I think July 4th and maybe the end of September, we had less than a half of inch of rain in Jefferson County. And then we really started to see a lot of problems regarding odors emanating from a lot of those areas where catch basins that didn't have traps. There was a lot of sewer gas that was coming out of those systems. So we've been able to start a phased approach of inspecting those catch basins. We have inspected most of the catch basins in the Park Duval neighborhood, for example, and we've also initiated some repair work there. Similarly, we have done inspections in the California neighborhood and starting to look at the work that will be done there. And going forward for the rest of this calendar year, we're still going to be evaluating and inspecting catch basins in the Shawnee, Chickasaw, and Taylor-Berry areas as well. And we're also looking at the possibility of evaluating chemical additives to prevent odors within our system. And that's part of the master plan as well. But drawing in a little close, the collection system recommendations really has us focusing initially on the force main pilot study and the Western outfall pilot study. The Western outfall pilot study is something that is a very, very large project that we're going to be looking at how we can address odors that may be associated in that part of our city. And we've even identified some monies to go after some community priority funding to help us move that project forward. But as far as the force main pilot study, the recommendation was to perform a pilot study to determine if a alternative chemical could be better than the current chemical used for hydrogen sulfide mitigation. We are waiting on the evaluation criteria for that chemical alternatives. And so we'll be able to switch to a different chemical if it is deemed that that will be more effective in as far as odor mitigation. In the Western outfall pilot study, the recommendation was that we would look at pressure readings to determine if there was odors escaping from the collection system. And it was recommended to do a pilot test to look at negative pressure unit to determine if this alleviated some of the positive pressure that may be coming out of the system. This is an approach or a technology that is not commonly utilized in the United States. And so we're continuing to perform our research, and we will continue to identify and work on really trying to close openings that can be closed within the system, such as catch basins outlined in the presentation. The one thing I will point out, and one of the challenges we have when you talk about openings in the system, we can't close all the openings because the pressure or the gas in the system does have to have a way to get out, because we definitely don't want to be in a situation where we're blowing up the sewer system in our community. So that's just something that we wanted to point out there. We evaluated 5 pump stations, and there are some recommended technologies that we could use at those specific 5 pump stations. And we're currently looking at continuing to evaluate the technology and to see if there's anything out there that we could utilize at our pump stations to mitigate odor specifically. So as far as the catch basins, this is an area where we've really made a lot of progress. I mentioned Park Duval. We have inspected 250 of those catch basins, and we have actually fixed the recommended amount, which was 12 in that area. These were catch basins that were kind of daisy chained together, and they have been fixed. And so we'll be monitoring to see how that impacts odors in the area. In the California neighborhood, we have inspected all of the catch basins in that neighborhood so far. We have fixed 71 of them. And as I mentioned before, we will continue to evaluate the catch basins in the Chickasaw neighborhood and in the Shawnee neighborhood. And I've told our team that once we get through with that evaluation process, we will make sure that we have the capital dollars as a part of our fiscal year 24 budget to make sure that we can continue the catch basin repairs in Chickasaw, Shawnee, and Taylor-Berry. I just said that. Yeah, so all those catch basins, all those we funded and completed in fiscal year 24.
All 4 of those areas.
That is correct. Sorry, I'm having trouble with this thing. I think I skipped a slide there. Oh, that's just talking about I think that's Chickasaw and those are the 4 areas, yes. So as far as phase 2, we are currently working at our Derek Guthrie Water Quality Treatment Center, which is to the south west part of Jefferson County. and we'll be evaluating odor from that treatment facility and some of the pump stations that drain to their Guthrie. So that will be phase 2 of the master plan that we'll be working on and keeping you abreast of what we're doing. But our team has been very focused on making sure that everything that we were required to do under your agreed order, that we are doing that. And I think in most cases with our Clarity program and now with the expedition of the catch basin repair work and the submittal of the 9 technical memorandums and the recommendations that we have there, we have went far and beyond just what we were required to do. We will continue to do that. We have been impacted on the Kennebec catch basin repair resources because the cost to do that has actually tripled and maybe even more than what it was several years ago. For example, several years ago when we were doing catch basins repairs, it was probably less than $5,000 a unit. We started doing work and getting bids in, it was up to almost $20,000 a unit. So you can see that really kind of impacts your ability to do a lot of work and affects your budget, particularly if it's not programmed in. So we'll keep an eye on the supply chain issues and all the inflationary cost impacts for that. But as I said before, we are committed to continue the catch basin focus in fiscal year 24, particularly in those neighborhoods in West Louisville. The update.
Thank you very much. Any questions from board members?
I have one question. Spoke of repair and catch basin. Give me an example of what that might involve.
Sure. You want to address that, Brian? Brian is our chief of operations.
So I think I understood your question when we're making the changes to the catch basin, what that involves.
Yeah.
The simplest way I could do it is think of the P-trap under your sink. Trap under your sink has a trap that comes down and goes out like that. And the catch basins, the ones that are built currently out in the separate storm sewer system that don't need to be trapped, and the ones that were built in the past that weren't trapped, it's just as simple as it drops down in and it goes into a pipe into the bigger pipe. What we do and what we have the vast majority of our combined system catch basins, actually it goes in and there's a sump that's full of water, and then there's a little that's here, and there's a pipe that's above that. So that water keeps the odors from coming back down. Everything goes in here, some of the solids and flowable stuff that comes off the streets drops out, water goes up and out. So what we're doing is basically, for the most part, unless it's just a repair, we're tearing the catch basin out and building a new one, going from an untrapped one to a trapped one. We're putting that P-trap in essentially.
And that's the $20,000 cost at the moment.
Yeah, and where they, we used to actually, they were 3,000 to 5,000. They went to 20. I think they're between 10 and 20 now. We're getting ready to bid a whole bunch of them out. So hopefully by scaling it, that will help us get a better price as well. A few hundred that you saw that were identified on there, those will all go out over the next year.
I have one question. I think this time last year, I made a note that you said that you were going to either repair or replace the catch basin at Parkville. Has that project been completed yet?
Yes.
Yes.
So there is one clarification I'll give on it though, from what we previously told you all. When we did the initial inspection, we gave you a higher number of untrapped basins. But because of the way federal regulations work and the way the Park Duval area was reconstructed, when they went in the work, if they took out the old combined pipe, they could not put back in a new combined pipe. So we had to put in storm lines and sewer lines. And those storm lines were all put in like the other ones are out in the county without traps. The problem is those tie back into that combined sewer at some point. Right. So we initially identified to you all the number of catch basins that weren't trapped.
Right.
But, and what Tony referred to, you really only have to trap that first one because the rest of them are daisy chained to it. So if you can keep it from coming out of the pipe into there, that's why I believe it was only 12 that we actually had to rebuild instead of the higher number we previously admitted.
We have data that suggests that it worked.
So far, it looks like it's working. We're still monitoring it. It's, odors are there when they're there. They're not there when they're not there. We're both doing drive-throughs to see what's there, but we're also monitoring when people call in. One of the complex issues of that area is it's also within the general area where you can get odors from Morse Forman Treatment Plant or from Rubber Town. Now, most of the people that live in the area know the difference. They know this is coming from the sewer, this is coming from Morse Forman, this is coming from Rubber Town. But not always, and especially if they're using the apps, the Smell My City app, for example, you don't get to have that interaction with them. They don't always put their information in, so we go out and try to do the follow-up, as well as you all, Rachel's staff is going out and doing follow-up also. So I think I've noticed a significant improvement. I'm not ready to declare full victory that we've got everything, but we're still looking. And there's a couple of other points I will make. There can always be something that cracks or breaks that lets an odor slip through. And there can be things like that we haven't found yet. So it will, if we find odors out there, we will first inspect what we installed worked, but then if not, or if it did, what else could it have been? One of the things that is a constant issue for us, the way that we clean these out, I mentioned that you've got that sump area, you have the hood, and you've got the pipe that goes out. Above that, there's another opening that has a plug in. That plug can get knocked out by if there's a pressure, and I'll explain that in a second, or we can knock it out through maintenance work. And we've got to make sure we keep putting those back in, because that was one of the problems we identified in Park Duval, is that some of those were out that we weren't aware had been taken out.
What's the function of the plug? Just
To be able to get us to be able to access into the other side of the hood. And when I say the pressure, Tony talked about it can be that gas can build up in there, but the biggest pressures that we normally see are when we have thunderstorms. And you get that huge amount of rainwater that's coming in all of these 24,000 catch basins, and it's pushing through there, and it literally pushes a wall of air through there. And we have over tightened the system in some areas before trying to deal with the odor issues, to the point where in Broadway on Taylor Boulevard, we have literally had manhole lids thrown 4 feet in the air when that wall of air comes down through there. So we would love to say we could close up every opening in the system, but we've got to give it a place. We've looked at some other things. We looked at, and we put hatches in that blow open and then you can shut back down. There's some different technologies we're looking at, but it does get a little interesting at times, and it's something that we have been working on for a long time. We have, I believe, worked well with Air Pollution Control District. We will continue to do this, but we've got a lot of work to do. I think we have made orders of magnitude improvement over the last 20 or 30 years, but we still have ways to go.
I have one other question. I went through some of my notes last night, and it says that you are doing a continuous inspection of the California, LaSalle, and Shawnee neighborhoods. And you, I think, mentioned you had done 91. You did 91 inspections of those neighborhoods. And you said 71 in the California area needed replacement.
That was one of the figures that was up on Mr. Parrott's presentation. And there's 71, and then there's more than 100 in each of the other two areas. So there's, my recollection is about 400.
So for, we think for Chickasaw neighborhood, there are 71 that need to be repaired. We inspected all of those that will be going out this year for fiscal year 23 is up to be bid. And then the Shawnee and Chickasaw neighborhood, we're waiting on final counts of what needs to be. So it's from Mr. Parrott's slide, it showed you we've probably done maybe 70% inspections of those.
Okay.
And then from there, we will go to the Taylor Berry neighborhood. And then I think one of his other slides is we also backtrack and we'll be adding Russell neighborhood. So we'll be adding the Russell neighborhood.
And just to clarify, if everyone doesn't know our fiscal year, since we've talked about it a number of times here, we are in fiscal year 23. It ends June 30th. Fiscal year 24 is July 1st of this year to June.
Is that coincides with what the metro government, the fiscal and calendar year?
Yes. Oh, yes.
So your budget is always based on fiscal year.
Yes, sir.
One other question. Around funding. I know MSD, they have their own board. We also have some input, I guess, Metro Council, that's it. Or,
We have our own board, and our board is the oversight board for the district.
right,
And we, on occasion, there are certain things that we do, our board is responsible for
right,
that are set up by Metro ordinance. And then if we have to raise rates, our board has the authority to raise rates up to 7% per year. And if we need more than that, we have to get Metro Council to approve it.
I have a question based on the previous years when when the odors were a complaint and we did the water intervention to minimize the odors. I was wondering whether there was any analysis of the data where you could be proactive to know that if there's X number of days of drought or et cetera, that rather than waiting for the whole neighborhood to be complaining about the smell, whether we know that we can anticipate this problem occurring based on, X number of days without rainfall, and then to implement a plan to prevent the odor occurring.
So we're in the middle of our budget season right now, talking about the fiscal year. We do have some things that we are working through and trying to price out and bring to the table. We will be implementing something. I can't tell you what that is yet, because there doesn't seem to be a consistent answer to the area. So it depends on, we know that after a certain number of days, a certain amount of rainfall in a certain number of days, we will start to have problems, but not in all areas. So we're trying to refine that some more, but we will have at least some kind of a pilot program in place this summer. I can't tell you exactly what that is yet because we're still working on it. But as soon as we figure out what it's going to be, we will report that back to Rachel and her team to share with you all.
Thank you.
Maybe a request elaborate a little bit on the community outreach and tell with the public, which I know APCD staff does quite a bit in regards to odor complaints and resolutions and forewarnings to Dr. May's question, maybe. Steve's role.
Our role?
Yeah, I'm working with the district.
Well, we're primarily, I mean, as far as our clarity program, it is a meeting that is coordinated and really conducted by MSD, providing an update to the communities. We have been moving around Jefferson County, and we will continue to do that. And if there is a special request for a meeting in a particular part of our city, we will be willing to continue to be a part of that. As far as any additional communications, I do know that there has been recent discussion about working more collaboratively with all of our metro agencies, how we can collectively communicate and get information out to the public. I think we have a meeting scheduled next week with Deputy Mayor George to kind of elaborate on that. But we can do a better job. I mean, that's the bottom line in terms of communicating and getting the information out. We're doing a lot of stuff.
Right.
We just need to tell people what we're doing.
So I think my question relates more to the incident. When an incident occurs.
Right.
Or, season of bad odors. Public outreach and response.
Let me add it. So when the incident occurs, if the property owner gives us their information, we try to make contact with them. One of the issues that's getting us more information but not getting us those contacts is when they come in through the apps where they just put an address and it's anonymous. It's kind of hard to communicate with somebody that doesn't tell you who they are. But that is one of the reasons why the work that Robin and Damon have done and as requested by staff, to be able to put that information up on our website so you can see, here's what we responded to, here's what we found, here's what we're doing. So, it's put up there a month in arrears, but it's still, there's more information out there for the public to be able to see. Plus, if anybody calls in, we will talk to anybody. I mean, one thing that I always try to make clear, I think we are still the only one in Louisville that if you call us 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, you're going to get a live person. It's, we have the services that we provide. There's a chance you can have sewage back up into your house or a building. There's other things. So we have a live person there around the clock. So anybody that wants to talk to us can talk to us, and we will come out and meet with the public at any time. Our inspectors meet with the public if they want to. If not, we try to follow up. As Tony has said, we are still trying to find more ways because some people want to be interacted with on social media, and some people want a phone call, and some people in person. We're still trying to figure out how to work with as many people as best we can. Not where we want to be yet, but we're still making strides. So, but we're open to suggestions, and there have been many. So,
I have an additional one, somewhat to Mr. Sullivan's point. When MSD has a planned or unplanned incident that may cause odors, Reg 113, which the board just revised today, actually has provision, and most people don't see this because it's on the backside of the reg when it's printed out. When anyone has an event that may cause or contribute to objectionable odors, they're required to give us a notice under regulation 9.07, the excess. We receive planned and unplanned event notices from Robin Burt, who's here with us today, as required under Reg 107. That may be a place where you share that information with the district as required, but it may be something that could be helpful to the public. We'll look at how we could help communicate that, letting you all take the lead, possibly through social media. Because I think one of the things that may be difficult, again, I'm in a dead corner here, and I apologize if folks haven't heard me, that with sewer odors, they can have a quality of life impact, that understanding why this may be occurring gives people some control. And Robin's reports also let us generally know how that problem is being addressed, what steps MSD is taking proactively to try to resolve the issue, and your estimate for when it will be fixed. But that information could be extremely beneficial for the public. We'll work together to talk about how that might be useful and where it could be used to assist the public in understanding.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Mr. Parrott,
Yes,
your
sir.
staff, for sharing all this information. Really appreciate that. It's good to get an update what's actually going
Yes,
on.
sir.
And, I think these truck would be part of the minutes, right? This presentation will be part.
This presentation will be provided along with the district's meeting
Minutes.
minutes on our webpage.
Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
thank you, sir.
Thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any other, okay, let's move on. Our spot today report. Any questions on that?
I'm just curious if there's been any other indications from the feds on the PM 2.5.
So the public comment period on the proposed reconsideration of the PM 2.5 National Ambient Air Quality Standard continues until March 28th. So we're still in that. My expectation is, and I could be wrong, we may see some requests for an extension of time to comment. There have been a number of really interesting articles out there, including one in the Guardian that came out the other day that looks at different areas and also looks at the range of EPA's proposals and how that might affect different communities across the nation. So.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to ask EPA about that request for extension of comment, which actually has been made by others. They did receive requests to extend the comment period and apparently have denied them. So we still expect the comment period to close on March
20th. Next report, enforcement status report. Any questions, upgrades, staff submitted report. Also, the excess emission report, received those email. Questions are great. The complaint and investigation status summary. Look good. Thank you. I think we have just about completed our agenda for today. I'd like to thank everyone for your participation. The next board meeting is Wednesday, April the 19th, 2023 at 10 a.m. Meeting is adjourned.
This one, Charles.